Americans for Tax Reform was created in 1985 to help pass the tax reform bill that President Reagan got passed in 1986. So the White House actually set up the organization and then asked me to run it outside of government as the lobby for tax reform.
Esto es La Inquietud con Garret Edwards, el lugar donde hay más preguntas que certezas.
Grover Norquist es un activista político estadounidense, egresado de la Universidad de Harvard, fundador de Americans for Tax Reform, ATR, Estadounidenses por la Reforma Fiscal, una ONG preocupada por los temas tributarios en los Estados Unidos de América. Esta amena charla, inédita hasta este momento, es un documento histórico de un momento en el tiempo que quizá no se repita. Era marzo de 2019, estábamos en el Círculo Italiano en Ciudad, Autónoma de Buenos Aires y hablamos de todo, incluyendo la Argentina de esa época, la de Mauricio Macri, muy distinta a la actual. Hoy queda a su disposición una charla de un momento pretérito, documento inalterable de lo que fuimos, de lo que somos, de lo que podríamos ser, de lo que podríamos haber sido y de lo que alguna vez quizá seamos. Hoy tenemos el placer de compartir algunos minutos con Grover Norquist. Grover Norquist es presidente y fundador de Americans for Tax Reform y ahora vamos a tener la conversación en inglés. Ustedes van a poder ver los subtítulos acá abajo. Grover, so pleased to have you here today. And we just told the audience that you are the president and founder of Americans for Tax Reform. Could you please tell us what ATR is?
Sure. Americans for Tax Reform was created in 1985 to help pass the tax reform bill that President Reagan got passed in 1986. So the White House actually set up the organization and then asked me to run it outside of government as the lobby for tax reform. When we did that, I created the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, where congressmen and senators, presidents, state legislators now sign a written pledge. I will vote against all efforts to raise taxes. It is a commitment to the American people, and it is a commitment in writing with two witnesses. And that has made it possible for more and more, particularly Republicans in the United States, to make that commitment. And since Bush broke his pledge,
He did?
President Bush took the pledge, Bush 41, back in 90.
Yeah, Bush Senior.
He only won the presidency because he took the pledge. He beat other candidates who wouldn't take the pledge, and he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes. I will govern as Reagan." And then he didn't. He raised taxes. Because he broke his pledge, he lost the next election in 1992. Since then, no Republican has voted for a tax increase at the national level, and 2 years later, in 1994, the Republicans captured the House and the Senate for the first time since 1952. Whereas they only held it for 2 years then, they've held the House and the Senate for more years than not, ever since 94, when all the Republicans signed the pledge. That was the difference. That's what changed things. So it was a very, very important. ATR was helpful in passing the tax bill, but the more long-term important project that we organized is the pledge to get people to promise to never raise taxes.
Did you realize back then how important that pledge was going to be?
I didn't know that it would be important. I thought that it could be important. I actually had an insight when I was 12 years old because our teacher in school said nobody knows who they're voting for local office. People don't know who these people are. Democracy is sort of ridiculous because you vote and you don't know who people are.
You go vote and then you forget who you voted for example.
Or, what do you know about somebody when you vote for them? They give a nice speech. And at the time I thought, well, what if the Republican Party branded itself as the party that would never raise taxes? Now, there are other issues, but if you could know that when you went into the booth, I don't know who to vote for. Well, the Republican won't raise my taxes. I thought that was good for 45% of the vote.
So they didn't have that kind of image way back when you created the pledge?
They did not, yes.
Okay, so they earned that throughout time.
Mm-hmm. And the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, by signing the pledge, then voters know that you're serious. It is a credible, believable commitment. Politicians for decades, centuries, millennia, have promised, I won't raise taxes, but then they do. But by making it something you sign, like a contract with the people, then if you raise taxes, you're not just a tax increaser, you also lied your way into office. And your chances of being defeated because you raise taxes are much higher, and therefore people don't raise taxes. And so people who've taken the pledge, ever since Bush broke his pledge, learned, don't break the pledge. And so we really have branded the Republican Party as the party that will not raise your taxes.
Have you had oath breakers after Bush Sr. Didn't keep his promise?
At the state level, we have. At the national level, congressmen or senators, no. But at the state level, some state legislators have broken the pledge, a couple of governors, but most don't. And the governor of Florida, Rick Scott, for 8 years, took the pledge, kept it under tremendous pressure, and told me it saved him lots of time because everybody with an idea that included a tax increase didn't ask for his help. They're just not happening.
ATR is also famous for its Wednesdays meetings. What are the Wednesday meetings?
Sure. In 1993, just as Bill Clinton took the presidency.
That guy from Arkansas, right?
That guy from Arkansas, yeah. And he was a very weak candidate, except Bush had crippled himself by breaking his word, so he got to be president. We wanted to stop the drive for what was known as Clinton care, for the government takeover of health care. And so we put together a meeting of about 20 people. We said, let's get together each week and figure out how we can stop Clinton care. And so we started meeting, and then we realized that if we were going to stop the drive for government-run healthcare, we had to slow the entire Clinton agenda down. So people who cared about other things than taxes, government regulation, or just taxes, other things in healthcare, taxes, spending, regulation, gun control, social issues, everybody who is in opposition to big government on anything, joined the coalition. And by the next 2 years, we'd grown from 20 people to 40. And the number two guy at the Republican National Committee was at every meeting. And then you had a situation where we grew to 60 people by 1996, and we're now at 150. And so 30 people present every meeting for 3 minutes each, hour and a half long meeting, very quick presentations, lots of paper handed out. Here's an article I wrote. Here's an invitation to an event. Just lots of paper you walk away with so you can read stuff, but nobody gives a speech. If you have lots to say, write it down, hand it out. 3 minutes. Here's what I'm doing on this issue. And then people can decide how to work together. You have to talk about the future. You have to talk about what you're doing, not what
you're thinking, what you're doing, right?
Not what you're thinking, not what your hopes are, not what somebody else should do. I think the president should do this. That's nice, but it's not helpful. Now, I have a plan to get the president to do it. We're going to send letters. We're going to have meetings. That's what you're doing. You're working to get the president to say, I want to do that too. But that forces the meeting to be positive, forward-looking. And today, in the United States, there's the Washington, D.C. meeting weekly, and 41 states have weekly or monthly meetings at the state level. And the other 9, we hope to get organized over the next several years. And internationally, there are 26 center-right meetings. Chile has a meeting. Buenos Aires is setting up a meeting. There's a meeting in Colombia. Canada as well. And our goal is to, in as many nations as possible, almost all of Europe is organized, is to get competent center-right meetings that build the broader freedom movement and keep it in touch with each other.
Grover, you have published many books. This is one of your latest, Leave Us Alone.
Yes.
And it speaks about the United States and how it works and how politics work over there. What would you say is the current state of American politics right now?
Sure. We're moving in good direction. We have a Republican Senate, Democratic House, Republican President, and now a conservative Supreme Court. And that's the big change is not Trump, the big change is the Supreme Court. Because Trump is 4 or 8 years and the court is 10 or 20. And so much of American politics, while we would elect Republican presidents and even conservatives, the court forced a drift to the left. It's like you're playing tennis or playing football on a boat, but the boat keeps moving this way. You think you're doing really well, but you haven't noticed that the court has moved the world underneath you to the left. And so while you may be winning elections, you're losing issues. That drift to the left has stopped, and it's actually moving back towards where the Constitution really was. What my analysis of the modern Republican Party, it is true today. Trump has changed nothing. It is true today as it was when Reagan was president, and it's going to be true for the next 25 years. The Republican Party, the conservative movement in America, is made up of people who, on their issue that moves their vote, the most important issue where they decide, candidate agrees with me, I'm with him. Disagrees, I'm against him. If what they want on that issue is to be left alone by government, they are available to our team. Don't raise my taxes, leave my money alone. Don't regulate my business, leave my business alone, leave my profession alone, leave my church alone, leave my religious affiliation alone. Let me educate my own children. 10% of Americans go to private school. The teachers' unions try to destroy those. 2 million Americans educate their own children at home. That was illegal in 48 states 30 years ago. 48 states not legal. Second Amendment. In the United States, the Second Amendment guarantees the right to keep and bear arms. And 30 years ago, we began to pass laws that say, if you are 21 years old and you're not crazy and you're not a criminal, you must be given the right to carry a gun concealed.
Okay, yeah.
And 41 states, that's true. There's 17.5 million Americans who have the right to carry a gun with them wherever they go. And the government has to give you the permit. They can't say, oh, we have questions, we want to talk to you about that, we want to wait, we'll delay. No, they have to give it to you. So we have, and now vaping, where people vape instead of smoke cigarettes, 10 million Americans have switched from cigarettes to vaping. The Democrats want to tax vaping, regulate vaping, and some of them want to prohibit it, like real prohibition. Those 10 million people look in the mirror and say, I'm saving my life, I am lengthening my life by not smoking cigarettes but vaping, it's healthier for me, maybe I vape half the time.
Why don't they let me do it?
Yes, and anyone who doesn't want me to do it is not my friend, they're my enemy. And this is why, as new groups come in, you expand liberty. Whenever the government comes up with a new idea that steps on somebody's toes, that insults them, degrades them, hurts them, robs them, steals from them, then you go, we're the Republicans, we won't do that to you, vote for us. And that's how the modern conservative movement is organized.
Grover, one last question. You've been in Argentina for the last couple of days. What is your vision of the country? This is your first visit here as well.
It is. One of the things that's obviously interesting is that everyone in America knows that at one point around 1900 or so, Argentina was the richest country in the hemisphere, and was growing and was getting a lot of immigrants in and so on. Very similar to the United States, very successful. And then it shifted more towards higher taxes, more government regulations, labor unions with the ability to compel people. a voluntary labor union is just like any other voluntary organization. But if the government comes in and gives it certain powers, it's a piece of the government. And it's not free market. And so when unions get power to force workers to do things workers don't want to do, like pay dues, you damage the economy, you make the labor market sclerotic, it's not flexible, and just growth goes like this instead of like that. And you go 50 years growing at 1% instead of 3%, and it's a huge difference in your trajectory. The good news is, as Chile has shown, if you dramatically change economic policy, you can, in a generation, make your country much richer. North Korea and Taiwan were poor countries. South Korea was the poor part of Korea when they had the war. Okay, then South Korea for a while was kind of Peronist, and then they went free market. Boom, that's when they took off. Taiwan was one of the poorer parts of China. They also tried many things before they took the free market approach. Hong Kong has always had the more free market approach. Singapore switched, when it became independent, to a free market approach. And so in a generation, Singapore, Taiwan,
they got better,
got much wealthier than their neighbors. And we're now seeing Brazil might well make the same decision that Chile did, Brazil with a democratically elected government, and I think that will greatly increase the acceptability of radical free market thinking, because it's not imposed by the military. Remember, Pinochet's first effort was Peronism and government control. That didn't work, and new guys came in, the Chicago boys, and they took free market. That worked. Okay, so it's not like Pinochet was free market. Pinochet just wanted to run the government. Turns out he found some people who could do it properly. In Brazil, the people surrounding the new president there are also Chicago-trained, very serious pro-growth people looking to reform pensions and working on corruption. Basically, if you make the government smaller, you have less corruption. If you make the government smaller, you have less corruption. You cannot take a birthday cake and put it under your sink and then plan to keep the cockroaches away. What you have to do is not put the birthday cake under the sink, and so the cockroaches have nothing to eat. And you can't have big government handing out money without corruption. It will be corrupted. And so don't have the government handing out money to people, and then you don't have corruption. And the transparency helps, but not handing out other people's money is the first part of ending corruption.
Really, with this note of optimism, then, Grover, we want to thank you for joining us today. Y les damos las gracias a todos por estar ahí del otro lado, concluyendo otra emisión. ¿Qué inquieta a Grover Norquist? No hace falta se lo pregunte directamente. Ya lo vieron y lo escucharon ustedes. ¿Qué le inquieta? La reforma fiscal.
Esto fue La Inquietud con Garret Edwards. Síguenos en redes sociales y en www.edwards.com.ar.